Block Tales. One of the greatest retro-style RPGs on Roblox is slowly falling off. And today, we will address the cause, effect, and why. We're not looking at a future release demo. We're looking at a future crime scene. A disaster forming in slow motion. So before we talk about why Demo 6 is going to be a mess, I'm going to do a quick 15-minute recap of everything that's happened in the story so far. Before we talk about why Demo 5 fell apart and why Demo 6 is probably going to be even worse, we need to actually understand what the game used to be. Because Block Tales was never born a disaster. It was basically a what if Roblox had its own Earthbound or Paper Mario. Block Tales is also built on the legacy of sword fights on the heights, SFOTH for short. One of the most iconic classic Roblox experiences ever made. SFOTH wasn't just a sword fighting game, it was rather a culture. It introduced the 7 swords, the Ice Dagger, the Venom Shank, the Ghost Walker, the Firebrand, the Wind Force, the Dark Heart, and the Illumina. Block Tales took these weapons from simple PvP weapons into artifacts of mass destruction. Retro Roblox culture with classic RPG storytelling. The core hook is your player character mysteriously time traveled back to the year 2010. Builderman has been kidnapped. The Roblox VIP convention was wrecked. You wake up in Tutorial Terry's bed, an arrogant, short-tempered penguin who serves as your recurring tutorial guide and comic relief. Terry is confused because it's 2010 and you're clearly not from this time. And you get kicked out and head toward the Roblox HQ in the Bisville area. Along the way, you fight basic enemies, then reach the top of the HQ, where you find Shaletsky beaten up by Nubador and his minions, Red and Blue Noob. You beat them up. Shaletsky explains the situation and gives you your first weapon, a wooden sword, which also breaks wooden planks in the overworld. He sends you toward Roadtown and Mount Blackrock to get the Ice Dagger. You travel through meadows, fight more noobs, have a rematch with Nubitor's group, and enter the caves. This ends the prologue and flows directly into Chapter 1. You ascend the icy caves, fighting animals and pests. Near the exit, you face your first real boss, Supreme Ant and her ant army. She demands you bow. It doesn't go well for her. You reach Roadtown, which is under martial law by the Cruel King. The Mayor Monty, gives you an adventurer ID and a side quest to find the missing accountant Jim. You traverse Mount Blackrock and the Snowy Thicket. You free Jim with dynamite, then enter the dungeons of Blackrock Castle. You solve a prisoner code puzzle to progress, fight guards in the sentient statue boss, and break into the main castle through creative means. In the kitchen, you meet the eccentric kitchen wizard. A hilarious sequence where you pick the wrong bottle, you climb a tower of appliances for the shrinking card, which lets you access a small hole to the treasure room and get the throne room key. You confront the Cruel King in his throne room, which is the main climax of Demo 1. He has prophetic visions and believes using the Ice Dagger can save his kingdom from an inevitable doom. Regardless of dialogue choice, he fights you. After you win, he has a regretful, melancholic death scene. Many players love the nostalgic Roblox admin/era vibes. Now we enter Demo 2. Right after defeating the Cruel King and claiming the Ice Dagger, Shaletsky, now in a wheelchair and bandaged from earlier events, formally introduces himself as one of Roblox's admins. He reveals the next target, the Venom Shank. Shaletsky also hints at the mysterious figure's involvement in Builderman's kidnapping and the Illumina theft. He shows you the Ice Dagger's special ability and sends you on your way. You head to the airport in West Bisville. Terry helps in his usual chaotic way, ramming into you and accusing you of theft before allowing you to board. During the flight, He describes Plaintown as a typical town and warns about the dangerous savanna and wildlife on the way to Tortiopolis. You spot Griefer in the gorilla in the distance. Using the shrinking card, you take a shortcut through an anthill and reach the outskirts of Tortiopolis. In a town, chaos erupts as Robloxians flee in distress. A gorilla is holding Mayor Nathaniel hostage. You try to intervene with a super ball, but Griefer intercepts and parries it, threatening to break your kneecaps if you interfere. The mayor is shocked to see his son. Griefer angrily tells his father to shut up and demands he leads him to the Venom Shank. They flee with the mayor. You grab the Jeep key and engage in a chase minigame through muddy roads. You even accidentally ram into Bigfoot during the pursuit. Deeper into the rainforest, you fight more enemies and eventually catch up to Griefer confronting his father. Griefer vents his resentment. He believes his father chose the town and his role as guardian of the Venom Shank over him, and his mother abandoning the family. Mayor Thaniel insists it was necessary for the greater good. When he notices you again, he slams a trowel into the ground, blocking the path with rocks. You clear it with dynamite. You then encounter a protective Komodo dragon guarding her offspring. After a fight, she turns friendly. She surprisingly literate, rewarding you with rocket boots for helping. You meet Tutorial Terry arguing with his brother Jerry about hedgehogs, and then they give you a tutorial on the rocket boots. Continuing through the rainforest, you encounter Griefer again, the third time in which he decides to fight you. You win against him and he runs off like a fairy queen. Continuing through the rainforest, you obtain an iron sword after a chase where Bigfoot steals it and does an L dance. You defeat Bigfoot near a mango tree and cut through tall grass blocking the path. You reach the Sacred Hollow, a giant tree housing the Venom Shank. You solve a vine-pulling puzzle. Emoji sequence to enter. Fight hostile enemies along friendly wood people, and break planks blocking the pedestal. In the main climax of Demo 2, Griefer ignores him planning to destroy the sword to ruin everything his father built. He takes the Venom Shank and immediately begins experiencing disturbing visions and voices from the sword's power. So you decide to end this once and for all. After he is beaten, he tosses his crowbar and stabs the Venom Shank into his own left leg, transforming into the monstrous bubonic plant, the chapter's final boss. You defeat the bubonic plant in an intense fight. It collapses and spews out the Venom Shank. Mayor Thaniel rushes to his mutated son, expressing deep sorrow and regret for failing to protect him and his mother. He thanks you for stopping Griefer and offers you the Venom Shank so no one else gets hurt. He apologizes to his son once more and you claim the sword. Ending Chapter 2. Demo 3. After getting the Venom Shank in Chapter 2, you return to Shaletsky, now using a cane. He's been thinking about the visions that affected both the Cruel King and Griefer, and he tasks you with retrieving the Ghostwalker in the catacombs beneath Telemon's manor in Scarytown. Telemon is another Roblox admin. You get a train ticket and board at Bisville Railways. The train ride quickly turns chaotic when bandits evade. In the driver's compartment, you find Red Noob and Blue Noob protecting the engineer, who turns out to be Noobador. Red and Blue Noob almost attack you, thinking you're a bandit, but Blue Noob stops him. A helmet bandit appears, and the three of you team up to fight off the bandits while Noobador drives. Afterward, Green and Purple Noob, Red and Blue's parents apparently, burst in for revenge because Noobador took the kids away from their criminal influence. You defeat them with help. Noobador explains he intervened to stop Green and Purple from turning Red and Blue into criminals. He even apologizes for the earlier fight and the prologue, which he was manipulated by the mysterious figure. When the train reaches Scarytown, Red Noob and Blue Noob personally thank you for saving Noobador in their lives. They give you a card so you can summon them in future battle. Afterward, you head through a zombie-filled cemetery to Telemon's manor. Tutorial Terry and his cousin Jerry show up. You go through a portal into the twilight. A haunted, dangerous version of the manor full of vampires, skeletons, ghosts, squatters. You meet the ghost of the kitchen wizard who died in Chapter 1. He gives you a quest to gather ingredients. After preparing everything and getting the potion, with Terry giving a tutorial on how to use it, you solve puzzles in the catacombs, fight more spooky enemies, and finally reach the Ghost Walker. Despite warnings that an impure soul touching it would die, you grab it anyway and die. This is where Chapter 3 completely changes tone and becomes something special. You wake up in a small house in the dream world. Builderman is there. You have to escape together by exploring the strange mental realm. This chapter shifts from generic haunted mansion, zombies and ghosts, nostalgia horror, into a profound exploration of the player's mind and emotions. You enter a hub with orbs representing different emotions and flaws. Giving into them pulls you into personalized dreamlike areas where you confront literal manifestations of those emotions as bosses. You fight 4 major emotional bosses in sequence. Greed, lured by fake riches and ticks piled in a maze of hands and mannequins. It mocks how easily you were deceived. Solitude and isolation, a lonely, intimate, almost seductive presence in a tear-filled, empty space. It offers eternal rest and companionship in nothingness if you just give up. Fear and terror, appearing in a dark purple forest with confusing signs and warnings. It panics and pleads while trying to manipulate you. And hatred, the final and most important, initially disguised as the helpful Builderman. After you defeat fear, it reveals its true corrupted heart form. Defeating hatred purifies your soul through sheer will and self-confrontation. You wake up back in the real world with Terry yelling at you for touching the sword. The kitchen wizard is shocked and impressed you survived and purified yourself through bravery and strong will. This is where Chapter 3 becomes truly special and why others who get it love it so much. The emotion bosses aren't just cool fights. They're manifestations of the players and, by extension, everyone's inner flaws and negative emotions. Hatred in particular is portrayed as something that lives inside of everyone's mind. It even ties back to the voices and visions that affected the cruel king and Griefer. The chapter is saying your biggest enemy is often your own emotions and mind.
What are you afraid of? Are you afraid of mice? Are you afraid of spiders, heights, clowns, sharks, vacuums, planes, crowds, dogs, procrastinating, lack of talent, very long messages, criticism, aging, getting lost, getting overwhelmed, confined spaces, being alone, death, snakes, death, kisses, germs, death, being awkward, death, death.
And now we move on to Demo 4. Demo 4, if you look at it, draws clear parallels to Demo 2, both through its Earth-like environment and its music. The non-boss faction theme in its chapter uses the same core melody as Demo 2, but with a slight Arabic twist that gives it a fresh feel. Your objective is to retrieve the Firebrand. After having a talk with Sheletsky, he says the Firebrand is the only sword without a guardian, and it was buried deep within the earth, so you should be able to get it very easily. After making your way through the desert, you encounter the Great Flachi, a boss whose name literally means useless. His attacks lean heavily into meme territory, and his exaggerated face has become one of the chapter's most iconic and memed moments. After defeating him, you receive a ship in a bottle, allowing you to travel across rivers. Notably, this is the only mechanic in the game that doesn't appear in the other section during battle. Soon after, you're ambushed by pirates for seemingly no reason. After dealing with them, you meet 2 of the game's key deuteragonists of Demo 4, Calypso, Kayoko's sister, and Captain Trotter. You begin solving puzzles with them, only for the same pirates to ambush you again right after before you enter the temple. After nearly finishing the fight, Calypso steps in and stops you. This leads to a truce, allowing you, Calypso, and Trotter to explore the temple together, along with the NPC pirates. As you progress, Calypso assists you when fighting NPCs. Deeper inside, you run into Flotchy once more, this time with Calypso explaining the meme in greater detail. You also unlock the shovel, which lets you dig beneath certain areas. Eventually, you reach the bottom of the temple and face the Temple Guardian. You and Calypso take him on, while Trotter and the others are stuck in the air, unable to fight. After the battle, it becomes clear this journey is taking a mental toll on Trotter. You solve one final puzzle that foreshadows a required sacrifice before reaching the firebrand. The group stares at it for a moment. You start to approach it, but Trotter suddenly rushes forward in a panic. What follows feels like another griefer incident. Calypso tries to calm him, but he pushes her away. This escalates into the second to last major fight of the game. Trotter betrays you and Calypso. The two of you manage to disorient him. Even after being disoriented, he continues targeting Calypso specifically. In a moment of panic, she pushes him off the cliff, killing him. This act indirectly fulfills the prophecy that a human sacrifice was needed to summon the final boss, the Ancient. The firebrand falls with him. You then fight the Ancients. After you defeat the Ancients gives that generic "will be back" villain talk. And then this ending is genuinely sad. Calypso is left grieving over Trotter, who had been a father figure to her since she was 12. Because you already confronted and mastered your own emotions back in Demo 3, you're unable to truly help her process what happened. It leaves the chapter on a heavy, unresolved note. Demo 4 executes the same kind of tonal whiplash that made Demo 3 so effective. It delivers the same emotional weight and clever tonal shifts while continuing to expand the world and characters in meaningful ways. So now that we're caught up, let's talk about Demo 5. And this is where I start saying what I really think, because this is where the game started falling off hard. You're now going after the Windwalker. Shaletsky gives you the rundown on King Kleos' death and how the Windforce is now being heavily guarded, since he was the last Guardian. Telamon then steps in to help guide you toward an area called the Trinity. But first, you have to pass through the Heights, where Core Block's factions are still active. While making your way through, you suddenly run into Opticus, one of Telamon's quirky admin friends. You end up in a fight against him. He starts at 600 health points and you're supposed to take him down, until he randomly does a move that does 9,999 damage to himself in the middle of the fight, and just decides to take Low Tier God's advice and get good by removing himself from existence. After that, he hands you the paintball gun for surviving him, and you finally move on. He's a pretty underappreciated boss, I'll give him that. So then you enter the Trinity proper: Redcliffe, Astral Isle, and the Celestial Realm, the three musketeers of balance. With King Kleos gone, his daughter Cassie is now in charge. Telamon tells you to keep an eye on her. You head to the Trinity Royal Palace and get introduced to three major new characters: Reginald, Robur, and Azuri. But right after that, you run into the Core Block's antagonist, the main antagonist of Demo 5, whose name I'm not even bothering to remember because he has zero buildup. Instead of a proper confrontation, you just end up fighting 4 of his random minions while the other 3 characters handle the actual boss off screen. Afterward, you unlock the Brigade Sword and head into the Redcliffe local city, which is currently under a major Core Block's raid. Here's where things get stupid. You start fighting Redcliffe factions who somehow think you're the enemy. But wait, this makes zero sense. These people supposedly know you've been fighting against the Core Block and even get word that you helped save Cassie from them. So why are they attacking you? Plot hole number 1, and it's a big one. Then you make your way to Reginald's throne. Instead of being grateful or even neutral toward you for protecting Cassie, Reginald immediately decides he doesn't believe you're keeping her safe and attacks you for literally no reason. This is the same guy who directly saw you save her, and now he's flipping on you out of nowhere. That definitely tracks. Another brilliant writing decision. It's almost impressive how quickly Demo 5 manages to undermine its own setup. You spend time building up all these alliances and saving important characters, only for the game to immediately have those same characters turn on you with no real justification. It doesn't feel like tension or conflict. It just feels like the writers needed excuses for more fights and didn't care if it made any sense. After you beat up Reginald in self-defense, Telamon finally shows up late to the scene like he always does. He assumes you heroically saved Reginald and starts running over to rejoice, completely missing the fact that you just had to fight him for no reason. He's kind of slow up the uptake. I don't know if he's just rage baiting, but whatever. From there, you head to the Celestial Realm, where you start fighting the Celestial Realm factions. There's also this annoying NPC wizard whose gimmick is basically the Ghost Walker on light mode. If you don't take him out in one turn, he slaps an invulnerability bubble on every one of your enemies and start healing them, which can easily stall a fight by an extra minute or two. What even makes less sense is why we're fighting these Trinity factions in the first place. At this point of the story, we fought our supposed allies more than we actually fight the core blocks. It completely undercuts any sense of who the real enemy is. After dealing with Celestial Realm, you solve puzzles to progress. Then you have a court session with Rober. He decides you're a useful ally after all and officially entrusts you with watching over Cassie. And then this leads you to the final area, the Astral Isle. Interestingly, this is the only part of the Trinity where Core Block's factions don't seem to show up at all. After solving more puzzles, you and Cassie meet Azuri. She somehow immediately suspects you're from the future and locks both you and Cassie in a room. It's starting to feel like everyone is now turning on you. Your supposed allies keep attacking or betraying you with no real justification. Then after you and Cassie solve the final puzzle of the game, Cassie suddenly runs off to grab the Wind Force. And why didn't you stop her? Because the plot needed her to. There's no reason given for why you just let her go alone. Right on cue, Telamon, who always arrives at the worst and latest possible moment, shows up and tells you it's going to be bad if you don't stop Cassie and that you've never told her about the visions. I have no idea why we didn't just tell her about the visions after you finished the puzzle. It would have taken 2 seconds and potentially prevent the entire disaster that follows. Afterwards, you run into the main Trinity characters, Azuri, Rober, and Reginald, who block your path and stop you from reaching Cassie. This forces you into a fight against 3 of them at once. This is one of the biggest plot holes in the chapter so far. Why are we constantly being made to fight people who are supposedly our allies? They have no real justification for turning on you. It just happens because the story needs another fight. Reginald is clearly an idiot. He saw you save Cassie from the start of Demo 5 from those Core Blocks minions at the Trinity. Yet he believes you're an intruder and goes as far to say you're no different than a Core Blocks member. It makes slightly more sense with Azuri, since she was neutral toward you from the start. But Rober, that's where the logic completely breaks down. He was the one who personally entrusted you with keeping Cassie safe. Now he's siding with the others against you without even trying to reason with them or hear you out. There is zero explanation for any of this. It just happens. It's as if the writers needed conflict and didn't care if it made the characters look completely inconsistent or stupid. After you finally defeat Azuri, Rober, and Reginald, you solve one last paintball puzzle before heading into the final area. Telamon shows up and basically tells you that something feels off and you both need to stay prepared. Then the Core Blocks boss, Argo, shows up with his pet dragon for a rematch. Telamon attempts to help, but the dragon casually whips his tail and knocks him out of the fight entirely. Now it's just you and Cassie. And this is easily one of the worst boss fights in the entire game. Cassie constantly relies on you to heal her, and if she dies, you instantly lose. Unlike the Calypso fight against the Ancients, where she basically dies in 2 turns and it's over quickly, this one forces you to completely change your build mid-chapter. You have to drop whatever offensive or balanced setup you are comfortable with and switch to a full support role just to keep Cassie alive. It's incredibly annoying and feels like artificial difficulty rather than good design. The fight drags on way longer than it should because you're constantly babysitting her health while trying to deal with Argyle and the dragon at the same time. After you finally beat him, everything seems to wrap up, but then he gives that "I'm not done" villain talk. At this point, you're tired of him. You then dismember him on the spot and that's it. I was genuinely surprised when I realized he was supposed to be the final boss, because there was almost zero buildup for him throughout the entire chapter. The entire story felt rushed and messy, like the writers were trying to hit certain story beats without actually earning them. Even after everything, when you head back to the Trinity, the characters give you a half-assed apology for attacking you earlier and suddenly act like they believe you're really there to save everyone. Then, while you're standing at the Windwalker, some random guy just walks in and casually asks for it like he's trying to buy an iPhone at the store. Everyone immediately tells him to leave, and he just says, "I better report that to the boss," before walking off. And I was just sitting there thinking, who is this guy? So here are the breakdowns of the major plot holes and logical issues I see in Demo 5. Number 1. Redcliffe factions attacking the player with zero justification. After helping save Cassie from core blocks threats and fighting against them, the Redcliffe people suddenly treat you as an enemy during the raid. This makes no sense. They supposedly have news that you're on their side and actively helping against the core blocks, yet they attack you anyway. It feels like conflict was forced just to create more fights. And then Cassie doesn't help. She stays neutral, but still buffs you with powers anyway. So it's not that annoying. Number 2. Reginald's complete 180 with no reasoning. Reginald directly witnessed you save Cassie from multiple core blocks factions earlier. Despite this, he immediately turns hostile and attacks you when you reach his throne. There is no explanation for why he suddenly distrusts you. He goes from presumably neutral to positive to trying to kill you with nothing in between. Number 3. Rollbur's betrayal is the biggest logic break. Rollbur was the one who personally entrusted you with protecting Cassie and called you a trustful ally. Then he sides with Azuri and Reginald against you without even attempting to talk things out or hear your side. Why would someone who gave you a responsibility to protect a queen flip on you so easily? It completely undermines his earlier characterization. Number 4. Constantly fighting allies more than actual enemies. Throughout the Trinity section, you spend more time fighting Redcliffe and Celestial Realm and other supposed allied factions than you do fighting core block. The story never properly explains why these groups keep turning on you. It makes the player feel like they're constantly in the wrong place at the wrong time with no real narrative reason. Number 5. Azuri locking you and Cassie away with almost no buildup. While her suspicion is slightly more understandable than the others, since she was neutral, it still comes out of nowhere. There's very little prior interaction or evidence that would lead her to this extreme action so quickly. Number 6. Cassie running off to grab the Wind Force with no resistance from the player. After solving the final puzzle, Cassie just takes off to get the Wind Force and the player does nothing to stop her. The story needed her to go alone for plot purposes, but it makes the player look incompetent or careless, especially after being told to watch over her. Number 7. The player never tells Cassie about the visions, one of the most glaring issues. Telamon later scolds you for not telling Cassie about the visions, yet there's no reason given for why you wouldn't have told her right after finishing the puzzle. It's a basic piece of information that could have prevented major problems and the game just ignores it. Number 8. The main antagonist has zero build-up as the final boss. He just shows up with his dragon for what's essentially the final fight, but he has little prior development or presence in the story. He feels like he was dropped in at the last minute rather than being properly built up as a major threat throughout the chapter. Number 9. The random guy at the Windwalker scene. The random guy at the Windforce scene. Near the end, some completely new character walks in and asks for the Windforce like he's ordering food. This feels like an extremely abrupt and unexplained setup for a future story. Who is he? Who's his boss? Why does he think he can just walk in and ask for a powerful artifact? It just comes out of nowhere with no context. And number 10. Half-assed apologies from Trinity characters. After everything that happened, including multiple fights against you, the Trinity characters give a very weak, rushed apology and suddenly act like they fully trust you again. It doesn't feel earned and makes their earlier hostility feel even more pointless. And number 11, a special mention, which is Telamon's complete incompetence as an admin. Telamon is supposed to be this powerful admin who helped create the Ghostwalker. Yet he spends most of Demo 5 acting completely clueless about what's going on. He shows up late to almost every major event, gives vague warnings, and then gets casually knocked out of the final fight by Argo's dragon with one casual tail whip. After that, he's barely mentioned again for the entire Demo 5 ending, for the rest of the chapter. He just acts like everything is fine or normal while the Trinity is falling apart and allies are turning on each other. It makes zero sense that someone this out of the loop and physically useless was responsible for building one of the Espoth swords in the first place. What makes this worse is the comparison to Shaletsky. Shaletsky had a clear, understandable reason for being limited. He was injured from the mysterious figure. Telamon, on the other hand, seems completely fine. There's no injury or excuse for why he's so useless and out of the loop. It makes him come across either extremely incompetent or just there for minor plot convenience rather than being a capable admin. The Demo 5 has a recurring pattern of allies turning on the player with little to no justification. Major story moments happening for the sake of the plot, and important information or character decisions being skipped to move things along faster. The fact that it took a year to make but still feels this rushed and full of holes makes the rewrite stand out even more. These issues pile up and make the chapter feel messy and unsatisfying, compared to the stronger emotional and logical beats in previous demos. They also made several questionable changes during the big rewrite that affected Demo 5 and earlier content. The random guy who casually walks in and asking for the Windwalker was added as part of the Demo 5 update, and he serves as the right-hand man of the mysterious figure, appearing at the end of every demo. They also heavily reduced Kyoko's role, even though she was originally planned to be a proper main supporting character in Demo 5. Instead of giving her meaningful screen time that would have made the world feel more grounded and realistic, they pushed her major involvement all the way to Demo 6, effectively removing her from the story when she was needed most. On top of that, they also changed what made Demo 3 iconic by rewriting the emotion bosses. Hatred and the others lost a lot of their original depth and dialogue and started sounding more like generic Disney villains instead of carrying the raw, unsettling presence they had before. While some of these changes have since been adjusted, it still damaged one of the strongest parts of the earlier demo. They also made Demo 3 bosses mechanically harder overall. You're now forced to rely on the Ghost Potion for multiple fights that didn't require it before, including the Turkey and the Slasher. The Turkey, once a minor boss, was heavily buffed that taking too long causes them to pull out a new shotgun called Thunderblast that deals 12 unavoidable damage. This move already existed before the rewrite. This was originally added, but it took around 10 turns for him to pull out the shotgun. Now, it only takes 2 or 3, essentially making him impossible to defeat on Hell mode. Since most players are still sitting at 20 to 30 health during this section, missing key abilities can easily lead to a one-shot, and the Turkey was later added to the pit, where he'll keep dealing constant damage until targeted. Slasher also received new moves, most notably Jump Stab, which had its damage increased from 10 to 25 with no clear reason. He also has a new move called Cleave, where he quick snipes you with his sword, and then you super guard him. Overall, it feels like the game now pushes players to use Ghost Potion on nearly every inconvenient fight in Demo 3 because many enemies gain secret or heavily strengthened moves that can quickly overwhelm unprepared players. This leads to a much bigger question. This isn't just a simple fall-off. It feels like a pattern and possibly a warning sign for how horribly Demo 6 might end up being. While a lot of people are still hyping up Demo 5 like it was some kind of masterpiece, there's a theory I have that explains the sudden drop in quality that hasn't been discussed much yet. My theory is that the major writing inconsistencies in Demo 5 stem from the removal of one of the lead co-writers during its development, Campyfire. He was essentially the backbone of the story, from Demo 1 all the way through 4. A lot of what made those earlier demos stand out, the sudden tonal whiplash in Demo 3 from a spooky haunted mansion into finding manifestations in your own emotions, something I'll drop deeper into in a separate video, and the deeper idea of how those powerful swords were affecting the world and characters were apparently his concept. Once he was gone, the story started showing clear cracks. The writing became more inconsistent. Character motivation started falling apart, and the overall direction felt less cohesive. The community in general seemed to underappreciate just how much of the game's identity and quality came from his contributions during those early demos. As for why he was removed, it personally stemmed from a personal relationship controversy. From what's been said, the situation wasn't as black and white as it was made out to be. It was over a situation with the woman he was with. The girl was 15 and he was 18 at the time they met. It was just an innocent thing. He didn't pursue anything until the girl had turned 20. Despite that, the narrative around him quickly turned into heavy fear-mongering. Anyone who tried to bring up context or defend him was reportedly silenced or banned almost immediately, which effectively shut down any real discussion about what actually happened. This left a lot of the situation one-sided and unresolved in the public eye. Sure, in the documents he also lied about some details, but it wasn't massive in the grand scheme of things. From what's been said, he was 18, she was 15 going on 16. In a lot of places and cultures, a 2 to 3 year age difference in relationship isn't treated like some massive scandal, especially once both are older. Yet, the reaction in the community was extremely harsh. People treated it like he'd done something unforgivable, even though he reportedly stated she was 20 to pursue anything deeper. The situation quickly turned into heavy fear-mongering. Even the admin seemed to overreact, shutting down discussion instead of handling it in a more measured way. It left a lot of people feeling like the punishment and public shaming didn't fully match the actual severity of what occurred. especially when compared to how similar situations are sometimes handled in other communities or in real life. From that perspective, what he did wasn't that bad. As he stated, he reportedly waited until she was 20 before anything serious, which some people saw as him acting like a gentleman and showing real patience and respect. The idea is that if he was willing to wait 3 years and hold off on doing anything until she was a legal adult, it suggests he genuinely cared about her rather than trying to take advantage of the situation. In this view, this relationship wasn't some crazy predatory thing, like he was EDP, but something that developed over time with clear boundaries. And the fact that he waited that long is used as proof that he must have really loved her. A lot of the anger toward him is seen as overblown, especially when you factor in how Americanized society has become nowadays. Even a small age difference can get blown completely out of proportion, with people acting like someone who's just a couple years older has lived through an entirely different lifetime of experiences. This kind of black and white thinking, combined with the fearmongering that spread on him through the community, turned what could have been handled as a private matter into a full-blown public witch hunt. Nobody needed to know this. Who cares? It's just gossip. Many felt the admins in the community overreacted instead of looking at the full context, especially since he had reportedly done the respectful thing by waiting. If you're in high school or college, you'd know that plenty of people in relationships with a 2 to 3 year gap. That kind of difference is average in those environments. The real issue, according to this view, isn't the gap itself, but the intention behind it. I know this has nothing to do with the game, but hear me out. A lot of people, especially society, now treats anyone under 18 like a helpless baby who needs to be protected from everything, while conveniently ignoring how capable young people can actually be. Mike Tyson, for example, was already at his prime at 17. Mozart was composing serious music at 9. And young entrepreneurs have built major companies before finishing high school. Maturity and capability does not magically appear the second someone turns 18. None of this has to do with Blocktail's Demo 6, as I stated. The point is that because the community reacted so immaturely and aggressively, the same person who helped shape the game that attracted so many fans in the first place is now completely gone. Campyfire basically disappeared after the situation. He's not active in the community anymore, and it feels like the admins may have already had issues with him and simply used this controversy as the perfect excuse to push him out and defame him, since he already had beef with another person in the team named ICT. The same community that claims to love the game is now stuck dealing with a noticeably weaker story in Demo 5, and it's largely because they chose to cannibalize one of their own key talents instead of handling things with any sense of proportion. The community essentially caused its own downfall. By reacting with such immaturity and aggression, they drove out the very person who had been the creative backbone of the game from the start. Instead of handling the situation with any sense of balance, they chose to silence discussion, spread fear, and push Campyfire out completely. In doing so, they removed the main source of the writing quality and direction that had made the earlier demos stand out. The inconsistencies, weak character work, and overall drop in storytelling that appeared in Demo 5 didn't come from nowhere. They were a direct result of the community turning on one of its own key talents and then having to live with the consequences of that decision. Demo 5 wasn't the only demo that had a rewrite. Apparently Demo 4 got rewritten as well, and it still turned out to be a masterpiece. The story continued strong, the characters remained consistent, and the overall quality held up even after the changes. But the moment Campyfire was out of the picture, the rewrite process completely fell apart. Demo 5 became a disaster by comparison, filled with inconsistencies, weak motivations, and forced conflicts that weren't there before. It's hard to ignore how much of a difference his presence made. When he was involved, even major rewrites managed to stay high quality. Once he was gone, the same kind of rewriting process produced something noticeably worse. I warned people early on that Demo 5 was going to fall off because of this, but no one believed me until it was too late. Now that everyone is openly calling it a disaster, they still refuse to acknowledge the real reason behind it. Instead of owning up to what happened, they continue fear-mongering about Campy Fire while conveniently ignoring how their own actions led to this outcome. Because of how aggressively the community turned on him and helped to push him out, the game lost the main person responsible for its creative direction and quality. The falloff we're seeing now isn't some random accident. It's a direct result of the community's own choices. They drove away the very talent that made the earlier demo strong, and now they're left dealing with the consequences while still refusing to admit their role in it. At this point, I have no faith in Demo 6 turning out any better. Campy Fire was the main creative force behind the game's foundation. He wrote the core story and lore for Demos 1 through 4, created the character dialogue, and composed the retro chiptune soundtracks, and handled the sound design that gave the game its nostalgic feel. He was the one who came up with major ideas like the mysterious figure twist and wove in characters like Kyoko and Calypso from his own writing novel. Because his vision shaped so much of the early game, the team kept his name in credits, but once the community turned on him and forced his removal, everything changed. The developers had to scrap his planned arcs, including the big timeline twist, and rewrite the story from scratch without him. So it really feels like spite scrubbing, which is why Kyoko has no major development until Demo 6. This is exactly why Demo 5 ended up such a mess. The community's own overreaction and regressive response directly caused the loss of the person who held everything together. By driving him out, they created the very inconsistencies and drop in quality they're now complaining about. So in Demo 6, you're going to see a massive quality drop, and by Demo 7, it's only going to get worse. It's going to be an ending that was worse than what happened on The Boys. We're talking about the same creative mind that shaped the tone, depth, and direction of the story suddenly gone, forcing everyone else to try and continue something they didn't fully build from the ground up. I really hate how they used him like this. It really does suck when you take something this complex and unique, something that had its own voice, its own soul, and its own way of telling stories, and then remove that person who was carrying that vision. Once that foundation is gone, no amount of rewrites or new writers can fully bring back what made it special in the first place. All you're left with is a hollowed out version of what could have been. And Demo 6 might take 2 years because the writers will have to backtrack to fix every single inconsistent story issue. And Demo 5 shows a huge admin strength problem. In the lore, so far, figures like Shaletsky and Telemon are supposed to be these major powerful Roblox gods. They're portrayed as important, competent, and influential people who helped shape the world and even created powerful artifacts like the Ghostwalker and Windforce in Demo 5. Yet in Demo 5, and even before, they come across as strangely fragile and ineffective. For example, Shaletsky was beaten by the mysterious figure, who casually walked into the HQ and basically curb stomped one of the most powerful betrayed admins in the game, leaving him at 5 health points. The noobs even tried to take credit for it afterward, which alone makes him look weaker than he's supposed to be. Telemon then gets casually knocked out of the final fight in Demo 5 by a Coreblock's Dragon Tail Whip, an enemy that's clearly much weaker than the mysterious figure. And then he's not even heard of ever again. He got knocked so far that nobody even knows where he's at. He's not a side character. He's one of the most iconic figures in the entire universe. If someone like him went missing, the world would shake. But Demo 5 treats it like he dropped his sandwich. When they were knocked out from the player fighting them, they most likely saw Telemon come in, get knocked out, and then go back to business like they're clocking in at a retail job. And then the player's perspective breaks. You saw him fall. You know he's missing. But the game gives you no reaction, dialogue, or any concern for a character who's supposed to be important. It makes the player feel like their perspective doesn't matter at all. So this raises a serious question. How strong are the admins actually supposed to be? Lore-wise, is it 500 to 1,000? Because right now, it doesn't make much narrative sense. If the mysterious figure can walk into the HQ and nearly kill one of the top admins with little effort, and then Telemon gets folded by something as relatively minor as a random dragon, then the entire administration as a whole starts looking sorry from a narrative standpoint. They're supposed to be these powerful, important figures, but the story keeps treating them like they're not that hard to deal with. It makes the mysterious figure and other major threats feel overwhelmingly strong by comparison, almost to an unrealistic degree. It also weakens the stakes. If the admins can't really do much, the player feels like the only competent person in the world, which makes the story feel lopsided. It adds to the overall feeling that Demo 5's writing wasn't properly planned out. The admins are clearly meant to feel important, but the story treats them like convenient plot devices that get knocked around when needed. The plot holes break logic in individual scenes and make them look weaker than they should be, which damages the world building and power scaling of the entire story. And when you fought Opticus, most likely another admin, he had 600 health points, which sounds like a decent amount on paper. But the fact that he could only deal 12 damage per turn makes him feel a lot less threatening than he should be. Even though this is probably done for gameplay balance so the player actually has a chance to win, it still creates a narrative inconsistency. If Opticus is supposed to be a capable admin and a fighter, dealing only 12 damage per turn feels way too low. What makes it crazier is a random raccoon in Demo 4 doing 14 damage on a charge attack, while an admin only does 12 is genuinely ridiculous. At this point, it's nitpicking it, but now it makes the power levels feel completely backwards. How does a raccoon outdamage an admin? I understand that you have to nerf the admins for either gameplay balance or story convenience, but it makes them look sorry from a narrative perspective. That kind of power scaling problem is one of the reasons Demo 5 and even some parts of Demo 3 and 4 feel off. The story wants us to see these admins as important and powerful, but the actual gameplay and fight outcomes say otherwise. It's hard to take these admins seriously when a raccoon can hit harder than one of them. So in conclusion, Demo 6 is probably going to be a disaster. The writing fell off hard once Campy Fire was gone. The community helped make that happen, and now we're stuck dealing with the consequences. I'll be genuinely surprised if it turns out decent. I hope I'm wrong, but right now I'm not expecting much.